Hey, we're back at Variety Homestead, and I'm going to do something today. Just a quick tour. I made a shooting box. Made this probably a year or so ago, but I wasn't videoing anything then, or I would have videoed the whole process. So what I'm going to do today is explain what I did, and you can make one too. This is for, I call it my range box, but it can be used for tools or, just to store other items that you might want to store. So what we have here is what looks like a plain box, but it's dovetailed. And when I was making this, I was going to make it in a different orientation. So hence, you don't see the dovetails on the outside. What you do see is the dovetails on the sides. You would normally see the tails on the outside, but of the front. But what you're really seeing is the pins, and the pins are not as attractive, and they're not cut perfectly. I'm not by any means perfect. Part of them I cut really great, part of them I didn't. But I want to give you a basic tour of how I made this. So the construction is dovetails, and I made the box itself, and then I sawed the lid off the box, as you can see right here. I just sawed it off all the way around. And you may say, hey, what's this thing? I'll tell you about that in a few minutes. And so I sawed it all the way around, but I just sawed it straight down through. This is one of the few things that I actually made with only hand tools. Almost everything I make with a combination of, I might use a table saw, I might use a chop saw, or hand saws. And in this particular case, I had enough scrap laying around that I could work it like I wanted to make this out of just hand tools. So I did that. Now, down at the bottom, we just have some strip of 1x that I mitered on the ends and glued together and nailed together. So let's do a basic tour of the outside. This is Malaysian pine. It's not stained, but it is shellacked about, I don't know, 4 or 5 coats, I think. And I made a raised panel lid for the top. Now, I did this twice. The first one I made was way too small. But the second one I made it too large on purpose, because when I made this box, I left the top part here completely open. This was wide open. And then what I did was I made the raised panel frame using the standard methods of, I have plowed out the grooves, and then I made small tenons here on the rails and stiles, and they fit in, and you glue them up, and you've got I glued them up after I put the frame in, or the panel in, obviously. And then I made it too big for this hole, and then I planed it down where needed, just 1, maybe 2 strokes at a time, until it got just perfect in a nice, decent squeeze fit. It wasn't a huge force, but it was a nice, decent squeeze fit. Then, after I did that, I went inside the box, and let me see if I can get this here so you can see these strips. I got strips along all 4 edges, and then there's strips across the top too. And what I did there was I glued those in so that the panel itself would not pop back out. It was a good fit, but obviously it had no strength at all to it. And you can see these glued strips in here. I mortised out hinges, and then I put those in. Now let's go to the other feature on the outside that you were asking about, or you might be asking about, and that's this. What this is just basically a stop for the lid, so that the lid, when it opens, will only go so far. It goes to, like, I don't know, 105 degrees ish, and then it stops the lid when it opens up. I could have put them on the ends here. There's if you know anything about cabinet makers' tool chests, like you see in Lost Art Press or some of the or a bunch of other videos, they will sometimes put a piece of wood here or something here to catch the lid on the very ends. I just put it there. I thought it was a cool way to balance it. Once going inside the box, what we see is going inside the box. What you see here is a tray that fits in. I used some bedroom end table scraps for this stuff here, and then a piece of like Lowe's or Home Depot Lawan for the bottom. And you can see the bottom is just tacked on with brads all the way around, not finished. This is shellacked, and I made dovetails here. You can see the dovetails here. And these are not, this is extremely soft wood. It was not my best report on dovetails, but hey, that's what it's all about, right? Is practicing. And this is not going to see the light of day except at the range, and I'm not ashamed. And here you see the pins on this side. And no, there's a lot left to be desired in the perfection world here. We got gaps there. We got a couple gaps there. But it is something that I use partially to practice with. So the top here, I notched out here and notched out here. And then, of course, cut this to length, rounded over the side here with a spoke shave, and then seated those in there. Once I did that, I put a couple of brads there to hold them in. And up here, I don't know what I put these brads in there. Oh, I know why. This piece of wood actually split right here. So I dabbled when I put the dovetails together. So I actually I put a little bit of glue here, put a couple of brads in here to hold it and keep it from splitting more. Again, not finished, but it is got a coat or two of shellac on it. All right, we'll put that off to the side. Looking down into the box, what you see is a couple of rails on the side here. These rails hold this tray that I just talked about. A couple of 3 screws along the back here to hold that support bar in the back that keeps the lid from flopping over. Mortised a couple of just standard hardware store hinges in, and put those evenly spaced. I think we're like 3.5 inches in from each end, and that centered them up okay. Then down at the bottom, what you see here is you have a piece of pallet wood, and this is oak. Not all pallets come in oak anymore. Used to be able to find a bunch of cool hardwood pallets, but now you got to really look. And when I see them at work or some other place, I'll stop and grab them and throw them in. Hand plane these down, nice and smooth, and then just put them together and fasten them at the bottom. So what I'll do now is I'll flip this box over so that you can see what happened on the bottom. So what we have here is I screwed these in. These are, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be 1 1/4 inch drywall screws. Back in the day when I thought that I wanted to be a cabinet maker, one of the big things in the late 90s was a lot of cabinet makers used drywall screws as interior and non-showing screws, and I use them for a lot of things. If it's not going to be exposed to the weather, then it's going to work out okay. You can see here where I matched up the bottom piece, mitered it so that it would be at the bottom, because I'm not perfect, and I got a few offcuts that weren't. After I built this, I actually made a shooting board, so I could have squared these up perfectly had I had a shooting board at the time, but I didn't. And then we'll flip it back over this way. Now, what do I put in here? Well, quite frankly, I put everything that I need. Let me do one more thing. So on the ends, on the outside here, you see that I just got these handles. They're just pieces of pine that I shaped and then glued up to the end here And then on the inside, you see them on the other side too, I got 3 drywall screws going in there to secure them. And this box here does not hold a ton of weight. So I'm not, I didn't have to fasten. And I didn't have any other type of fasteners, or not fasteners, hinge or handles at the time. So I just made what I had. And you put that back in there, and you can then close it up. And then I had this latch. It's not a expensive latch either, and it just holds it all together. You pick it up by the handles, and you can, and away you go to the range. So some of the things I put in my range box. These are the contents of my shooting box. This is what I always have in my shooting box. Now I may add a few things to it depending on whether or not I'm shooting black powder, or whether I want to throw a box of ammo in there or something. Typically I carry the ammo and maybe a shooting rest of some type of bag or something in another bag somewhere. So what I carry this out. This is like my go-to stuff that always goes with me every single time. So we'll start down here. These are just an assortment of staples. These are all T50s. These fit in this staple gun, but they also fit an electric staple gun that I have that I use frequently as well, that runs off of a charger. So I probably have enough staples here. There's 5,000 in this one box alone, so I probably will not exhaust this particular box. Staple gun here. You got a couple of pairs of muffs, ear muffs. These do a really good job. These were not expensive. These I bought these at a gun store, and these I think came online. These are typically, my wife uses these. This is just a towel, for general purpose towel. I can cut a piece off of it like I did before, use it to clean with, or just use it to wipe powder or dirt or whatever off my hands. Coming up here, safety glasses. Now these safety glasses are dirt cheap. You can see I got 3 pair here. They stay in the box all the time in case there's other folks that are out there shooting with me and they don't have anything. If they don't have any hearing protection, I do have a couple more headphone ear muffs, but typically we can go to ear plugs. Now I've got these. I got off of Base. These are some pretty cool ones. These don't have a string tied to them. They just fit in your ears, and so they're just use those. Then I got these. Bought these at a gun store, I think. These do have a string on them. I like these. These are Smith & Wesson is probably just a sponsor of those, but they were not expensive either. I've got a bag of earplugs where you twist them and they compress, and then when you put them in your ears, they expand. You got those. Coming up here, what I have here is a recoil. This is called a PAST, P-A-S-T, recoil pad. This thing is a game changer for me. When I was in my 30s and even in my 40s, I would go out to the range and I could shoot all day long, and yes, I'd get a sore shoulder and probably a big bruise. But this is a game changer for me. I bought this years ago. They still sell them. They've got them in regular, they've got them in Magnum, and I think they got like a Super Max or something. And it's a recoil displacing pad that wraps around your shoulder and it clips in the front, and it does an excellent job. You can shoot all day with this. Then right here I've got a spotting scope. I got this spotting scope. This is a Barska spotting scope. It's not super expensive. Maybe when I got it for Christmas, I think it's around $50, $75. Maybe it's more now, I don't know, but has a little tripod that it sits on, and then the spotting scope will zoom to 40 power. So if you're shooting out to 100 yards, you can easily zoom in on the target. I don't know how, I've never shot at a formal range beyond 100 yards where I had a spotting scope, so I can't speak to their use for 200, 300, 400 yards. Over here, I've got, this is a Simmons rangefinder, I bought this years ago. It's a monocular type rangefinder. It's supposedly good out to 800 yards. I've never had to range out that far, but I typically keep this so that I can range, make sure I'm at the exact range I want to be when I'm at the range. I can move somewhere out. Let's say I'm zeroing in at 50 and with black powder, I can move out to 75 and zero out there. That sort of thing. Really like having. I also take this hunting, but it stays in my shooting box. Then I've got a pair of binoculars. These are Nikon 7 by 27.1s. These go hunting with me as well, but they're cool to have at the range if you're shooting short range, like if you're shooting handguns at 25, black powder at 50. You don't have to set up the spotting scope. You can just use these bad boys and just shoot out there with your binoculars and see how good you are, how good you're doing. Then in the middle section here, I've just got some basic tools. So I got a flathead screwdriver here, small flathead screwdriver here. These are for making some adjustments onto maybe a scope adjustments or maybe some small part adjustments to handgun. Pair of pliers. You never know what you're going to need pliers for. I've used them for various and sundry things and trying to adjust a mechanical rest and things like that. I also have a Swiss Army knife. This was given to me as well, and I really like it, but I keep it in my shooting box. It's a Beretta Swiss Army knife, and it's got all kinds of gadgets on it, which I have used. It's got your typical fixed blade knife, and it's got all the cool stuff, you know, bottle opener and all that stuff that Swiss Army knives have. This has a little light on it too, if you want to zoom in on something, but I keep that in my shooting box too, to keep from having to take a whole tool bag out there is what I do it for. And another thing I keep from having to take a whole tool bag out there for is a Gerber multi-tool. Now, I like the Leathermans, I like the Gerbers. They have slightly different configurations, but basically a multi-tool like this, this one I like because it springs open automatically and you don't have to manipulate it to get it to open like you do with the Leathermans. It's got, of course, it's got the knives and the screwdrivers. This also has a pair of wire cutters, small wire cutters on it, saw. I mean, just all the stuff that a good multi-tool ought to have. I keep it out there if I need to do some real quickie things. It has a Phillips head. I can do, a flat head. I can do some scope adjustments with that if I happen to just reach for it. So that's basically what I take all the time in my shooting box. And that is the end of the shooting box story for now. If I build another one, I'll be certain to document it. And as always, if you like this, hit the like button. If you're so inclined, hit the subscribe button. And we'd love to see you again in the future. Thank you for visiting Variety Homestead.